My name is Larry, and welcome to another installment of the Old Gazer channel. This is a channel that is dedicated to providing some advice and suggestions and information that's designed to help beginning amateur astronomers find their way through the beginnings of this hobby and transitioning into the hobby. I'm an old-time astronomer. I've been in the hobby for a long time, let's say, and I have great passion for the hobby. And I just want to share some things with you that I sort of wish people had shared with me along the way as I got into the hobby and progressed through it. So, if you saw, let's just get right into it. If you saw the first video, which, by the way, it's not necessary that you have seen that first video in order to watch this one. There's no prerequisites associated with this channel. But I hope if you have opportunity on some, cloudy night, that you might go back and watch that video. I would appreciate that very much. But at any rate, I alluded in that first video to the fact that amateur astronomers have to be very patient because there's a lot of frustrations that have to be dealt with. And some of these are things over which we have absolutely no control. So I thought in this video we would talk about a couple of these frustrations, some of the bigger ones, and just share with you what these frustrations are and whether or not there's anything that can be done to mitigate these frustrations a little bit. So I kind of feel like I ought to have my Captain Obvious hat on for this video because these are going to appear to be pretty obvious, and you're going to wonder perhaps, well, why do we even discuss these? These are very obvious things. Well, maybe there'll be a few insights along through here that maybe you haven't thought of or that might be helpful in dealing with these frustrations. Okay, first thing I want to talk about is the weather. One of the most frustrating things for an amateur astronomer is bad weather. Let's say that you're chomping at the bit to go out and view something in the night sky, and you get out there and socked in with cloud cover. Pardon me. Of course, you're not going to see anything if you're socked in with cloud cover. Absolutely nothing you can do about it. Can be very disappointing, can be very frustrating. It might cause you to miss a special event that you've been waiting to see. For example, perhaps a lunar eclipse. You go out, it's cloudy, lost opportunity. You can't see the eclipse. Very frustrating, very disappointing. There are other aspects of weather that can also be frustrating. For example, cold. Let's say you live in one of the northern latitudes and it's the middle of January and you want to go out and view or image the Orion Nebula. Well, it's probably going to be really cold, and that means you're going to have to bundle up, probably have to wear gloves, which makes it very difficult to operate your telescope and turn focusing knobs and that kind of thing. So you'll have to be taking gloves on and off and maybe using, hand warmers or something like that. Cold can be a very distracting thing when you're trying to do amateur astronomy. But again, it's something that we have no control over. We just have to make the best of it that we can. And it's just something we have to deal with. If you live in one of the southern latitudes, let's say, in the United States, where heat and humidity might be a problem, and I happen to be in that category. I live in a place where it can get very warm, and where for a good part of the year, condensation of dew caused by high humidity and heat can be a real problem. That's a problem that you have to deal with as well. And it's not so hard to deal with the heat as it is cold in most cases, because it is night and the temperatures are probably dropping a little bit, and you can always dress down. As long as you don't take that to an extreme, of course, unless you've got a completely private viewing area, if you know what I mean. But at any rate, it's a little bit easier to deal with heat and not so easy to deal with dew, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Another element of weather that can be a real frustration is wind. It might be very clear outside. It might be, pleasant temperatures, no real threat of dew. But the wind might be blowing so hard that it can, cause your telescope to move or vibrate a little bit. And that's not good if you're trying to view something, and especially if you're trying to image something, take a picture of something in the night sky. A good gust of wind can ruin that in a hurry. So you have to be concerned about wind. So, you know, these are just some things that we really don't have any control over, but they can be very, very frustrating. Bad weather. Now, what can we do to mitigate the effects of bad weather? Well, actually, there are some things that you can do, some very effective things that you can do to mitigate the effects of bad weather. How do you get around a cloudy night? How do you cope with the frustrations of a cloudy night? And by the way, if you haven't already, you will soon discover as you get into this hobby that there are more cloudy nights than you probably thought or hoped there would be. You know, cloudy nights, one of the banes of amateur astronomy. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with being able to avoid the frustration and disappointment that comes with cloudy nights? Well, the best way to deal with that, in my experience, is to plan your viewing outings. Use forecasts. You can use your local weather forecast, but there are some much better tools that have been developed specifically for astronomers and which are available as smartphone apps and in other forms. These will give you very detailed hour-by-hour forecasts several days out of things like percent cloud cover, temperature, wind speed and direction, the dew point, everything that you can need to get a good feel for what the weather is predicted to be. And you can use that to plan your viewing or imaging sessions accordingly. Now, you have to understand these are forecasts, and you know, they're not perfect, and as you get further out in time, they tend to become less and less accurate. So, you know, they're not perfect by any means. They're going to be wrong sometimes, but it's better to use a tool like that than to just, you know, go about it blindly and run outside, you know, sort of on an ad hoc basis and hope to see something in the night sky, which can lead to frustration if it's cloudy out there. So use these tools to plan your viewing sessions. If it looks like it's going to be cloudy or some other bad weather is going to be extreme enough, just don't go out that night. You know, put it out of your mind and wait for a better night and find something else to do with your time to engage in the hobby on those cloudy nights. If it looks like it's going to be clear, then plan on going out and you'll be ready for that. If you plan your outings around the weather and you learn to cope with that, it sort of puts you in control rather than the weather being in control. You're going to determine when you're going to go out there and when you're not, based on using all these tools that are available to help us understand and cope with the weather conditions that are out there. So that's the most effective way to deal with overcast or cloudy conditions. So that brings up the question, what do you do on those cloudy nights? Well, there are some very fun things that you can do on those cloudy nights that will enable you to enjoy your hobby without actually viewing or imaging things in the night sky. What are some of these things? Well, first of all, there is a wonderful forum out there called, guess what? Cloudy Nights. This is a forum that is utilized by just about all amateur astronomers. If there's anything related to amateur astronomy, there are probably one or more threads pertaining to that issue on cloudy nights. There are a lot of very advanced, informed amateur astronomers on that website, on that forum. Excuse me. You can post on that forum if you like. If you become a member, you can learn a ton about the hobby on cloudy nights, and it's a lot of fun and it's very entertaining just to spend an evening browsing through cloudy nights and reading all the great information that's available to you there. I highly recommend Cloudy Nights. You can also, of course, take the opportunity on cloudy nights to view YouTube channels such as the one you're currently watching, although I fear that many of them out there are probably better and certainly more entertaining than this one. But at any rate, There are a number of really good and some very entertaining YouTube videos out there that are specifically oriented towards amateur astronomy and other things such as astrophotography and just astronomy in general, space exploration, so forth. Take advantage of the time that you have and just view some of these YouTube videos, and you know, you'll learn a lot and you'll have a lot of fun doing that. If you're old school like me, read a book. You know, a few things give me more pleasure than sitting down with a literal book, you know, a cover that has pages before me. And there are many, many, many books available on astronomy, amateur astronomy, telescopes, space exploration, you know, you name it. One of my favorite things to do on a cloudy night is to sit down with a really good book and just read it. Other things you can do, maintain your equipment. You know, maybe you have a reflecting telescope that's in need of some collimation. Maybe a cloudy night is a good time to take care of that, and so forth. Now, there's another thing to consider here. Cloudy nights give you an opportunity to take a break from the hobby. Now, if you really get the bug as you get into amateur astronomy, you're going to want to spend every available minute pursuing your hobby. And unfortunately, that sometimes is just not practical. And really not something that you want to do if you really think about it. You probably got families or friends that you need to spend time with and do things with outside the hobby. Cloudy nights, bad weather nights certainly give you the opportunity to do that, and it's a good time, you know, occasionally or maybe even frequently to just take a break from the hobby and get involved with other aspects of life that you know that are high priority type things that need attention. So, you know, those are some suggestions of things you can do on cloudy nights that will enable you to engage in your hobby when you can't view or image objects out there in the night sky. There are some specific things you can do with regard to other aspects of bad weather. Cold, for example, we've already discussed. You can bundle up. You can stay warm. I mean, if you set your mind to it, you can stay warm. You know, it's distracting to have to bundle up and use gloves and all that kind of thing, but it doesn't actually prevent you from viewing or imaging objects. And in cold weather months, you'll find some of the better opportunities to view or image objects, and so you'll want to take advantage of that. So you can deal with cold by just bundling up and learning to deal with the distraction that represents. Heat is easier to deal with. You are going to be out there at night. Things are probably cooling off a little bit. You can dress down, as we've already discussed, as long as you keep that reasonable. So you can deal with heat pretty well. Humidity, dew. What can you do about dew? Now, I mentioned earlier that I happen to live in a location in the American South where humidity can be a pretty frequent problem. I went out just a few nights ago with this telescope to view Jupiter, which is positioned well in the sky right now and is reasonably close to the Earth, not being too far removed from opposition. I went out to view Jupiter, and almost as soon as I got everything set up, dew started to condense all over everything almost immediately. I guess the dew point was just at that place. And before long, I had dew condensed on the surfaces of the telescope, you know, on everything around me. And had I not been able to do something to mitigate the effects of that dew, I would very quickly have had dew form on the optics of my telescope, and you're not going to be able to do any viewing or imaging if there's dew all over your optics. So how do you deal with that? Well, there's a couple of ways that are very effective in dealing with dew. One of them is to have something like this. This is a dew shield, and it simply fits over the end of your telescope like this. And it will help to prevent dew from forming on the optics of your telescope. It will shield your optics from the dew. It will form on this instead of your optics. Now, this particular one is simply a flexible plastic tube that has a felt lining inside it, and the felt absorbs the dew that forms on this and keeps it from running down onto the optics of your telescope. This thing is very effective. I used this when I was out there on the night I was talking about, and I had no problems with dew forming on the optics of my telescope. And when I got home back and took this dew shield off, it was very moist, all on the inside of this felt lining about halfway down, where this thing had absorbed that dew and kept it away from the optics of the telescope. So I bought this particular one for about $30. Again, it's a flexible plastic tube, fastens with Velcro, and it has a felt lining. Some telescopes come with dew shields built in, and you'll want to take advantage of those if you have one of those. You can make one out of plastic or cardboard, just anything that will come out some significant distance from the end of your telescope and will help to keep dew from condensing on the optics of your telescope. You can also use heating elements, sometimes known as dew heaters, which will keep the temperature of your telescope and your optics a little bit above the surrounding temperature, which prevents the formation of dew. So there are some pretty effective ways of dealing with dew, and you can mitigate that problem in that way. What about wind? Well, perhaps, these are some very obvious suggestions, but perhaps you'll be able to sort of get around the corner of a building somewhere and still have a line of sight to what you want to see to block off the wind. Perhaps you can get behind a tree trunk to block off the effects of the wind. If you can't really get enough protection from the wind, some people build shields, portable shields that they can put up around their telescope in the direction from which the wind is coming, and that will block the gusty wind off of your telescope and alleviate that problem. But if there's nothing else you can do, if you're in an open area and don't have anything to shield yourself, probably a good idea to not plan to do any imaging that night. You can do viewing, but not a good night to try to take any photographs of the night sky, because a wind gust will come along and just ruin everything in a heartbeat. So you just try to shield yourself from the wind as best you can, or if you can't, just plan on doing viewing rather than imaging or those kinds of things. So those are some elements of bad weather that can spoil viewing or imaging sessions. And those are some suggestions about what can be done to mitigate or alleviate or minimize the frustrations and the disappointments associated with bad weather. Let me just say a word right here about these frustrations, especially the ones over which we have no control. It will be very, very helpful if you can regard these frustrations as not disappointing frustrations over which we have little or no control, but if you view them rather as obstacles or challenges that have to be overcome in your pursuit of amateur astronomy. To me, that's the best way to look at it. You can take control of these things that seem to be uncontrollable by planning your viewing sessions, by taking these steps that we've talked about to try to mitigate some of these various aspects of bad weather. Gives you a sense of being in control rather than being controlled by these events or these environments or circumstances. And that just kind of puts everything on its ear and removes a lot of the frustration and disappointment associated with these things. Another way to consider it is once you have a nice night for viewing or imaging, when the weather is clear and the atmosphere is calm and it's maybe not too cold or too hot, and you don't have to worry about dew or wind or any of those things, those nights are rewards for having worked through all of these things and persevered in order to get to that place, and therefore your enjoyment of that night is going to be perhaps greater and more rewarding than it otherwise would have been. So don't view these as frustrations or disappointments over which you have little or no control. Just understand that it comes with a territory. It's part of amateur astronomy, and you can seize control of these frustrations in this situation by just approaching it in the right way and planning and taking advantage of all the things that you can think of to mitigate the effects of these. And it'll cause you to and use these bad weather times to advance your understanding of the hobby through all of the other things that we've talked about here. So frustrations due to weather don't have to be all that frustrating or disappointing, and won't be unless you allow them to do so. Okay? There's one other thing that I want to talk about on this video, and then we'll be done, which I'm sure you're looking forward to, and that is something called seeing conditions, or simply seeing. Now that refers to how calm or how still the atmosphere is. Us earthbound astronomers are forced to look at things in the night sky through the Earth's atmosphere, and that can sometimes be an impediment to getting the nice, sharp, clear views that we would like to get. Now, you might go outside and it might be clear. There might be little or no wind. The temperatures might be moderate. It might be just a good night for viewing. And, you know, you get lined up on whatever object you want to view, and you look through the eyepiece, and you'll see, and despite your best efforts to focus, the object that you're looking at will be blurry or indistinct. It might be wavy or jittery or appear to dance around in your field of view. And your first thought is going to be, well, what's wrong with my telescope? Or maybe, you know, what's wrong with my eyes? And, you know, fortunately, it's usually neither of those two things. The problem that you're experiencing is something called bad seeing. And that means that there is simply a lot of turbulence or disturbance in the atmosphere that is interfering with your viewing of the object. Turbulence, atmospheric turbulence. Now, what are some of the causes of atmospheric turbulence? Well, first of all, there can be wind, especially wind shear type things. If you've got wind that's blowing in different directions in different layers of the atmosphere, that of course is going to blur or cause your image to move or dance around. So, you know, wind can be a cause of that. Another common source of atmospheric turbulence is the radiation effect. You know, during the day, when the sun is out, the earth and the objects on the surface are absorbing heat or energy from the sun, and then when the sun goes down and things begin to cool off, that heat or energy radiates back into the air, and as it rises, of course, it's like a heat wave. It's a wavy disturbance in the atmosphere, and when you try to look through a disturbance like that, you're going to get wavy, jittery, blurred, indistinct images. That's particularly a problem if you're trying to view across concrete or asphalt surfaces, or trying to look over the top of buildings where heat is radiating from the roof, and that kind of thing. So radiation, heat radiation, can be a big cause of bad seeing conditions. There are a number of other things that can cause disturbances in the Earth's atmosphere. That just mentioned two of the most common ones there. There are other things that can interfere with your vision. Air pollution, for example, suspended particulate matter in the Earth's atmosphere can be a big contributor to bad seeing. And then some things that you might not think of, but just the position of an object in the sky can have a big effect on seeing conditions. For example, if you're trying to view an object that's low on the horizon, you're going to be you're looking through a lot of atmosphere to view or image that object, and the more atmosphere, of course, that you look through, the bigger the impact of things like atmospheric distortions are going to be. If, on the other hand, you're looking at an object that's high in the sky, you're looking through less atmosphere, and that will mitigate somewhat the effects of these atmospheric disturbances or the turbulence in the air. So, bad seeing occurs when the atmosphere is not calm and still, or when you're looking at an object along the horizon, or when there's a lot of, you know, air pollution in the air, and that can really spoil an evening's viewing or imaging. Is there anything you can do to mitigate the effects of bad seeing? There are some things that will help to do that. Some are pretty obvious, but for example, try to view objects when they're higher in the sky instead of close to the horizon. Now, that might be inconvenient sometimes. You might have to wait a long time for that condition to arise. But, you know, try to plan viewing your objects in the sky so that you can view them when they're higher in the sky as opposed to lower in the sky. And that will help to mitigate the effects of atmospheric turbulence and bad seeing conditions. Another thing you can do, of course, is to just be patient. You know, once again, this is a further illustration of how amateur astronomy is all about patience. Atmospheric turbulence is not constant. You know, it's kind of random. There are certain times during the night when it will be worse than other times. There might be brief intervals when the atmosphere will settle down a little bit, and seeing will suddenly become better, at least briefly. And if you're patient enough and you wait for those moments, then you can get in some at least brief periods of decent seeing if you're just patient enough to wait for those moments to come along till you get that little bit of, you know, random clearing of the atmosphere. Try not to view over concrete or asphalt surfaces or over the tops of buildings where radiation is more of a factor. If you can, and if you have the opportunity, view over grass or water or over trees, some surface where the radiation effect is going to be less than it might otherwise be the case, and that will help your viewing a little bit. One of the holy grails of amateur astronomy is to find those nights when the weather is good and the atmosphere is calm and still. You know, those are the nights that amateur astronomers live for. And those two conditions are not as frequent as we might like, but when they occur, that's when you realize that it was worth going through all of these frustrations just to get to that point. You have to take advantage of those nights when they come along, but that will make it all worthwhile, and you will really appreciate what it's like to view or image objects in the night sky on those nights when the weather is clear and the seeing conditions are good. But when they're not, accept these as being part of amateur astronomy. Bad weather, bad seeing conditions come with the territory. Don't think of them as frustrating disappointments or things over which you have no control and against which you feel powerless. Plan your outings. Do the things that you can do to mitigate the effects of bad weather and bad seeing. And you know, use the nights when you can't work your way through those things to advance your hobby in other ways, as we've discussed here. And I don't want to belabor the point, but at any rate, those are two of the most common and potentially frustrating aspects of amateur astronomy, and those are some suggestions about ways that you can deal with that and not remain in a continual state of frustration and disappointment and a sense of being out of control. Take control of it. Plan your sessions. Do all the little things that you can do to mitigate the effects of bad weather and bad seeing, and just move on with the hobby. Okay, in the next video, we're going to talk about another one of the real banes of the amateur astronomer. I won't reveal what that is yet, but another thing that can be extremely frustrating, extremely disappointing, and we're going to talk about what that is and ways that you can perhaps mitigate that as well. That'll be for the next video. For now, let's call it quits for this one. And let me just conclude by once again, thank you so very much for watching, and I wish all of you clear skies and good viewing.